So last panel of the night. I'm really happy to be here. I'm Sara Sorcher. I'm deputy editor of Passcode, the digital security and privacy section at the Christian Science Monitor. You all know Katie. She's bug bounty maven and CEO of Luta Security, and Lisa Wiswell, who is the digital security lead at the Defense Digital Service. We're here to talk about the future of government bug bounties. So lots to talk about. I know we also have some reporters, other people here who might want to ask questions. So we'll start and then kick it over to you guys. So Lisa, maybe you can start by running us through what is Hack the Pentagon for those people who don't know, might be tuning in online, and how the idea came about.
Yeah, thanks everyone for having me. I know I represent a little bit of a different crowd than what you're used to, being from the Department of Defense. We had kicked around this idea that in the Department of Defense, this concept of security through obscurity was just way too antiquated. And we focus a lot on compliance, and when we do, we sacrifice real security by doing that. So we were kicking around some novel concepts, bug bounty being one of them, in part because the Microsoft bug bounty had just launched, and we had spent some time talking to Katie about how it is to take something like that to market in an organization as complicated as Microsoft. Honestly, if you were going to compare us, the Department of Defense, to any organization out there in terms of being a large, complex enterprise, for us, Microsoft was a really good example. So we had kicked around the idea for a while, and then once the Defense Digital Service became an organization, about 15 months ago now, it gave us the ability to move out in bringing this industry best practice into the government. So that was the beginning of Hack the Pentagon, which is a series of bug bounties. It started with one pilot that HackerOne had hosted for us. It was insanely successful, much more so than we could have ever dreamt, in part because we had a tremendous CISO the Defense Media Activity, Alex Romero, who's sitting here, who was able to make sure that we were organized internally to fix stuff in as near real time as possible. And that's one of the things that you'll hear me say a few times today, probably, that if you don't have the right resources at the receiving end to actually fix your vulnerabilities, then you shouldn't be doing a bug bounty. And then that evolved out of the success of Hack the Pentagon. We have a couple of contracts now that for the next 3 years will be utilizing HackerOne over and over again, as well as SYNAC, because the Department of Defense, of course, has a lot of sensitive assets. We would also like to start to use crowdsourced security concepts against. So we've also contracted with SYNAC to start hosting some of our really sensitive challenges, and we actually just had one finish up with them last week for the first of the sensitive ones.
Yeah, so I do want to get back to classification in a second, but maybe we start at the beginning of this process with the people who are doing the actual research. Who are these people who are willing to, go and find bugs for the Pentagon, and what are their motivations versus some of the other programs, that working for company bounties, for instance, or other markets?
Well, I think that hackers, have a variety of motivations. Hackers are so far still human, as far as I know. And, as human beings, we were hearing great stories from Kyle, about different motivations and motivations evolving. And so I look at the mix of motivations as they are for any human being. It's a mix of compensation, recognition, and pursuit of intellectual happiness, right? So the hackers who went for the Pentagon challenges, I think, represented a group of individuals who not only had that different mix of wanting to participate in something new, but they also had this feeling that they wanted to try and be among the first who were, actually allowed legally for the first time in over 35 years of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act existing in the United States, allowed to legally say something if they saw something. And this was a huge, big deal. So I think that these folks were excited to participate. And it's that usual spectrum of curious and motivated by, the novelty of it, and certainly the novelty of getting one of those awesome coins. So, yes.
So I do want to talk about the vetting aspect of this, because it seems like you can't let just everybody come into some systems, depending especially on some of the more classified ones. What, Lisa, from your perspective, was the issue was there any issue with the Pentagon in getting people on board with this idea of letting in outside researchers? And then Katie, maybe, from your perspective, what goes into that, from the vetting for this of the security researcher side? Are there some hackers that fit more than others?
I mean, sure. So obviously inside the Pentagon, there was high drama for a long time.
Okay.
And I think, I didn't go to jail, so, nobody was successful in that. But there's a lot of folks that are still very nervous about this, in part because, they've not seen a real live hacker. They don't yet know.
Yes, they did.
They don't. Yeah, that's there.
Right there.
Katie's been there. It's an uncomfortable thing, particularly when you start to talk about an organization whose entire existence is about defense and about security, and allowing folks that they don't know inside is a little uncomfortable, and that's okay. A lot of folks are really coming along though, and you see this. You see them get excited about it. You see them understand that this is an effective security mechanism, and even though it's a little uncomfortable still, we've proven that it works so far. The researchers that have participated in our challenges have followed all the directions to a T. I'm sure part of that's because they're a little bit nervous as well. I mean, it is the Department of Defense, so that's kind of a scary thing, and they really respect the rules given that. The other thing that I'd add on to what Katie talked about, who these researchers are, we heard often through a series of 3 sets of exit interviews now from folks that a lot of why they decided to choose this challenge over some of the others was because of, you can translate it to patriotic reasons. They honestly thought that, there's not an awful lot that you can do if you're in this security industry to help your country. And the fact that we went out there so publicly and said, please consider, if you've got some skill, consider doing this for us, that a lot of folks kind of took that leap of faith with us, and they've been, happy to continue to support over the past almost year now.
So when you're in the meetings with folks at the Pentagon, how did you win them over? How did you convey that hackers can be trusted?
There's no way we could have pulled this off without, the team inside the Pentagon. So Alex is here. Lisa is basically the main bureaucracy hacker of the Pentagon. There's no making it happen without the internal champions, and that's going to be true of a government bug bounty program, a government vulnerability disclosure program. Because even vuln disclosure itself can be scary if you've never done it before. You don't have that capacity. So I think honestly they were curious at first, like, how did you do that thing with Microsoft that they had publicly said they would never pay for bugs, and you did that thing? And so in those conversations, it became clear that there were ways to stack the cards in the favor of success. And I think, with multiple conversations over time, and internal strong champions who knew the ins and outs of what to do and how to get around and how to basically, hack the Pentagon from the inside, that was really what it took. So teamwork.
And so talk a little bit about the trajectory towards going to more classified systems. You mentioned it in your intro.
Not classified.
Sensitive. More sensitive.
Definitely not allowing folks to hack classified systems.
Okay. So good clarification.
Public service announcement.
Yeah,
no jail time.
Definitely good clarification. But so maybe talk about the trajectory of that, and are you going towards, more and more sensitive things as this trust is built between the researcher community and the government?
Yeah, so we're testing out a lot of concepts right now. We finished this first challenge with SYNAC. It was against what we're calling file transfer mechanisms, which is essentially how networks communicate back and forth. That's mission critical for the Department of Defense. We've got, folks disperse across the globe, and information that needs to get pushed from one system to another. So when you start to understand the security of sort of the ways in which data gets from one place to another, you start to understand the security of the networks themselves. And that's really important to us. But we recognize there's a lot of things, especially things that are involving real, no kidding, operational requirements. We have to be really smart about how we do it. And so opening it up to the world, probably not going to happen, at least for a while. But definitely in a more controlled environment, it's a good sweet spot for us still. We plan to continue that. The SNAC Challenge was also really successful. And we had about 80 researchers that were participating with us. It's something like 2,500 research hours were clocked on it. And we found a lot of really interesting findings that surprised a lot of folks, myself included. I'm always surprised by these. That's kind of why it's still exciting. There's a lot of nerve-wracking moments, but there's a lot of really good, beneficial rewards that come out of it too. So it's great, and we've got 2 persistent contracts, and we plan to use it. We plan to drive it like we stole it for the next 3 years.
Yeah, so we are at an interesting, time frame right now. We have a new administration, and what is your sense about the appetite for government bug bounties going forward? What do you hope that the relationship will be under the Trump administration? Any indication so far?
Oh, me. Oh, right. Old Pinky has to answer this one. Okay. Here's the thing. I think that it's been a proven success, and I think that the strength of the execution team, in carrying out these challenges has been really the thing that hopefully will continue this momentum. I also, I look at it and, if national security is truly a priority, which it should be in any administration, that there's no reason not to continue this beneficial program. If you're watching, I think it's a really good idea. Please don't tweet at me. No, but I mean, I think one of the things I had wanted to mention was the fact that the first bug bounty program of the United States government, being the Department of Defense, was hugely significant in that it really kind of greenlights the concept for everybody else. If the Department of Defense, the most powerful military organization in the world, is willing to say, actually, you know what? We would like to enlist the help of hackers to help us secure our systems and be more efficient about it. I think that, to me, is such a good message to the rest of the U.S. government and other governments around the world. And certainly, with my company now, we're getting a lot of inquiries from a lot of governments. So I think that's been good momentum.
And at least in the Department of Defense, I mean, we've proven this concept, and we've also proven that there's a lot of bang for your buck here. So when you talk about cost efficiencies, this is a really tremendous concept for us to continue to explore. We feel that it's important, obviously, to continue to find low-cost ways to do security and actually become more secure, right? Like I said sort of at the beginning, we spend a lot of time and a lot of money on compliance. And when you do that, you focus fewer energies on actual security. So this is, it's here to stay in the Department of Defense.
Are there other parts of the government that are starting to look into this, or you mentioned internationally? What has been some of the response that you've heard so far?
Yeah, I think since Hack the Pentagon's results came out, most of my job is full-time consulting to the civilian agencies. I mean, I have calls every single day with some component that's trying to understand how to effectively do this internally, but also how to be a sort of, as Katie mentioned, a change agent in their organization to convince their leadership that this is an effective way forward. So we continue to be essentially consultants to the rest of the government on this and are happy to. I know Katie's been talking to folks. I'm sure that every company that offers bug bounties as a service have been talking to government firms for certain.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, that's a very similar snowball effect of interest, watching the success that I had when I launched the programs at Microsoft. Internal to Microsoft, we launched them in a limited fashion against, certain targets and with certain goals in mind. And then all of a sudden, my phone starts ringing off the hook with other departments of Microsoft saying, do me next. I want to go next. And part of that is assessing their capabilities in whether or not it's going to be a bounty bloodbath like Corey. Corey didn't exactly say that, but essentially, if they're not ready to fix those bugs, if they're not ready for that flood of hacker love, then, it's going to be a bad time for them. And that's exactly the kind of counsel that some of these organizations need. So they get excited about the success, that's good. Mm-hmm. They get excited about securing their systems and working with hackers, that's great. But if they want to jump right into a bug bounty program, I'm usually the one to say, hey, what else are you doing in terms of your your security, and what steps have you taken on your own, and how prepared are you to fix it?
Yeah, that's a great point. I want to open it up to audience questions. Anyone have any questions for? Yes.
Yes. Okay. 2 questions. The first one is very easy to say yes, no. Will there be data available, and data, not just general results about the program, so that it could feed into academic research? And everybody thinks bug bounties are great. I think bug bounties are great, but there's also a need for scientific data and research done academically to prove that these programs are working. Specifically, when you said getting more bang for the buck.
Yeah.
That's very important.
I don't have a yes or no answer for it yet, but the idea is great, and we are working on some open source, open data concepts in Defense Digital Service right now. Love the idea, going to try to figure out how to field it.
I feel like getting the data out there and feeding it into academic research specifically is
Definitely.
a good way to get more people on board. That was my first question. Second question is, coming from Israel, the country that gave you the analyzer, arguably one of the first Pentagon not legal hackers, we have maybe an alternative to bug bounty program with the IDF. The IDF has a privilege of being able to mandatorily enlist everybody at the age of 18 and actually start vetting people at the age of 16 for security clearances, but also for capabilities to go into defense and other computer-oriented missions. But then after 3 years, those people leave the IDF and they go and start fantastic cybersecurity companies. Is there a way to take the success that you've had with the Hack to Pentagon and orient it maybe towards high school kids here in the US, so that you get the next talent pool of those cyber warriors that are going to actually join, maybe have a career in military and government, so use the success and maybe the cool factor, I guess, of the bug bounty program to make some bigger difference?
I'm not supposed to have...
Just to repeat the question for our live stream, the question is, can you orient this program towards high school students to just get them interested at an earlier age?
Maybe a version of it or something like that.
So I don't play favorites, but David Dworkin. So when Hack the Pentagon happened, we had a couple of researchers that were able to come to the Pentagon, in part because they lived in the near the DC area. David Dworkin had graduated from high school that week. And so he was a self-learner through these bug bounty programs and was able to accept a challenge coin from the Secretary of Defense. That's pretty cool. We care a lot about this, and not just for high school students, but for folks who maybe want a second career, right, and to start relooking. And so that's one of the reasons we love the open bounties so much. It's also one of the reasons that our entire .mil space is in scope of our vulnerability disclosure policy. If you can get at it online, public facing, you should be able to tell us what the vulnerabilities are, right? That it's see something, say something, as Katie mentioned. We love it because we want for high school kids, we want for folks who are interested in this field, but they don't know how to get started, to sort of start to self-teach and have a good community of other folks that are going to help to teach them. So we get more folks interested in the STEM world, so we get more folks interested in maybe our problem set. So maybe they do want to work for the government someday. Maybe they don't, and that's fine too. We still use them in this capacity. It's a win-win.
And just to add to that, I mean, I think the inspiration factor of holding up some of these programs is really powerful in terms of inspiring young people to participate and get interested and know that they can actually expand this skill set that in the past, I mean, the word hacker has such a clouded meaning, and I blame the media for this. But I mean, essentially, that word has taken on such a different meaning from what I grew up understanding it to be, which is that exploration and boundless curiosity. And the youngest hacker I ever became aware of was 5 years old and found an authorization bypass in Xbox Live by basically, you know, leaning on the keyboard a little bit there. Nice job, QA guys. Anyway, the point is, even a 5-year-old has the ability to find a security vulnerability, and why should we be limiting, limiting who can participate, especially in vuln disclosure programs where there isn't the sticky situation of child labor in a bug bounty program where you have to have an age cutoff for getting paid. But I mean, I think that that's going to be the highlight of inspiring the next generation, is showing them that there are legal ways that you can do this. You can do this to be helpful. And the piece that I wrote last year to highlight, what this really means significantly, in our new world order of superpowers. In cybersecurity, we are redefining superpowers in the world. And when I was a kid, they televised the space race and all of that stuff during the traditional Cold War. We're in the cyberspace race right now. So I think that that inspiration factor is huge. And I liked your question. Thanks.
Yeah. Any last questions? So I'll have one last question for you guys, just a little bit more broadly. And you saw under the Obama administration, there were some points of tension, disagreement between, over issues like encryption, for instance, between the government and security researchers, or proposed changes to WASANA or the CFA or other things, small things that, But it seems to me like the bug bounty program was a way maybe to build, trust between these communities. I mean, how do you see that? This continuing into the future? Do you see this as a lasting relationship? And how do you see the broader, relationship between the security community and the government going in the next couple of years?
As an old hacker, I would have to say that I've been inspired by watching our generation who sort of grew up on the internet, grew up figuring out how to exploit vulnerabilities, then were basically told not to do that, stop doing that. And now we've kind of matriculated into this influential class of people who are older and are able to build those bridges with government and carry these messages further. I think that it's been an interesting arc and an evolution of the cooperation between the security community. Some of us, have grown up in it, and it's this arc of adoption. I think of some of these things that all of these hackers, funny colored haired pierced hackers, can actually be allies in even some of the most, lockdown military organizations in the world.
Yeah, and I think, over the years you've seen that it levels all across the government. But I mean, the fact that, Mudge went to be a program manager at DARPA once upon a time, right? But we've started to kind of put, as Katie said, we've made these, we've bridged these gaps over the years, and it's almost sort of part of our fiber now. So I think, I do think that the relationships are here to stay, and at least in, specific to the Department of Defense, I think that there's something to that idea of the patriotism too. It's more than just I am interested in doing this because I care a lot about the general health of the internet. It's also because I feel like this is a mission that I should be participating in. So I think that it'll only grow.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay.